Welcome back to AI Algorithmic Inequity, the final episode. We're your hosts, Ellen
and Claire.
So, for this episode, we wanted to conclude the discussions we've been having and talk about the future of AI. And obviously, we're very concerned about the risks and the harms it can cause leading forwards. So, we thought it would be good to end by really thinking about how to navigate our lives and society with AI becoming more prevalent and what we can do going forwards. Studies suggest that women trust AI less than men do, according to an article titled "Why Are Women Less Likely to Use AI?" from Bloomberg. The careers that they dominate may be more at risk.
As discussed in the previous episode about the financial side of AI, the presence of more women in all sectors is inherently beneficial. Companies will see higher resilience during economic turndowns when there is a significant number of women present on staff. Furthermore, when diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, initiatives are implemented, it results in increased productivity, adaptability to change, and stronger innovation for all.
And the Federal Bank of New York Consumer Survey, compiled by economists at the Bank for International Settlements, found what they called an economically and statistically significant Gen AI gender gap. This survey found that around half of all men reported having used generative AI over the previous year, but only 30% of women did. Physical labour jobs are less likely to be affected by AI, and as we've seen, most of these industries are controlled by men, so it's understandable why women have less trust in it or do not use it as much. But the author of this article also says to people who are skeptical about AI, don't knock it until you've tried it. But I really think that there needs to be more understanding than that, and that we should listen to the concerns that people have about it instead of dismissing it. So I think this is worth discussing.
Okay, if you want to start with my concerns, I guess I kind of mentioned this, I think it was the last episode, one of the 2 episodes, about how much it impacts the environment.
Yeah.
And I should have looked this up again before talking about it, but it's something that I keep seeing people talk about who are like, hey, maybe we shouldn't use AI, because a lot of people are just like, oh, we shouldn't use it because it's plagiarism or whatever, it's cheating. And I think that's a good reason not to use it. But I also think it's like, for people who don't care about that, like if they just don't care, I mean, that's them. But then for it to be like, okay, well, it's not just that it's not really a good thing to do. It's also, it's so bad for the environment.
Yeah.
And it takes up so much energy, and it just takes so much to run all those mechanisms and all those algorithms, and just in the places to store the data. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people truly understand the problems that it can cause, which is why we've sort of done this podcast to hopefully raise awareness about that. But there's just so many, as we've seen, like biases that are embedded within it, the environmental issues as you've discussed, and also just as we're seeing it get more and more
like mainstream.
Yeah, more mainstream and more sort of, it's creating much more realistic images now. And even just a few years ago, it was like you could tell it obviously wasn't real. And whilst like most of the time we can still tell, there are a lot of people who can't. You know, I think especially older people just can't see when an image is AI generated.
Yeah, I have 2 things. I saw a video the other day of this woman who was recording like her mother or something, and like her whole TikTok For You page was just AI videos, and it didn't quite mention if like they knew that it was AI, but it was just like, that's kind of crazy that your whole For You page is just AI videos of these random things that are so unrealistic that like, it's, how can you not tell that this is real, that this isn't real? And then my other thing that I saw this morning, and it was about, you know, those like when you go onto like a website, there's a bunch of different ways that they do this, but when you go onto like a website or something, and it's like, prove you're not a robot or something like that. And I saw a video of someone discussing like where that came from, and again, this was TikTok. I can't attest to how accurate this is, but I thought I'd bring it up. But how the founder of it, and like the reason that kind of thing was made was actually because you know how they used to do it where it was like there was these weird letters and you had to like be like, what is this letter? And stuff like that. Apparently the original reason behind that, besides just being like, hey, we want to know if you're human, was also to help people translate books.
Yeah.
Of like, so because, you know, humans are better at it than machines in that sense. So it was like, okay, tell me what these letters are that a machine can't really figure out, but a human could figure out. And so it started out as kind of like a good way to like help translate and help identify what certain texts were saying. But then it turned into, I think it got sold or something, and then it turned into this whole thing of like, okay, now we're using this to train robots. Like now we're like every time you tell a robot, or every time you be like, I'm not a robot and I'm gonna fill out all these things, like where you have to figure out like, oh, how many squares of this include a bicycle, how many squares of this include a traffic thing. That was for machines, and I think it was even for like self-driving cars. To figure out, to like take that data and then learn how to like figure that out for themselves. And I was just like, that's actually crazy that I never thought of, like, where is this going? And also, why am I being asked if I'm not a robot? Like, I feel like I never really had that thought of like, why am I being asked if I'm a robot? Because I've also seen videos where robots are doing that and they can do it. So then it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just a little rant that I thought about.
Yeah. No, and I think like people don't realize that every time, you know, you type something into ChatGPT, you're training the AI to make these quite disturbing realistic images of people. But not only that, but also there's things in ChatGPT that are like stolen from other like writers, other artists. You know, it's just a collection of just random information, and the AI summaries that we see in all of our Google searches now, that's the first thing that shows up. But sometimes it's just like a random thing from a Reddit thread. You know, it's not any backed up like legitimate source. So it's, you know, impacting our research as well. And also, as we saw right before we started recording, that ad I had about the AI nurses, and it said, oh, next time you call like a healthcare line, you might not be speaking to a human. And the bias and the discrimination in healthcare is bad enough already. You know, like women, people of colour, queer people get their healthcare needs dismissed all the time. And as we've seen how biased and harmful AI is with all of those biased like research and information in there, if healthcare providers on the phone are going to be controlled by AI, that issue is just going to get even worse.
And I feel like as a whole, this isn't to like fearmonger or anything, of be like, it's like, not, I don't know how to say this, but like how sometimes people will be like, oh my gosh, like you're touching your phone, like radiation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of just like those kind of like conspiracy theories, like this
and
isn't
like
to be
microwaves as well.
Yeah, this isn't to be like a conspiracy thing, but this is to be like this is, I feel like not enough people are realizing like AI is meant to take, when you put stuff into AI, it takes your data. Like it's that's how it builds upon and makes more things. I don't know if I'm explaining that at all.
No, it makes sense.
Like, yeah. And then another thing too, on using AI to like tell you things. When I think of like, because I've had profs say this, and just people in general, of like, oh, if you don't want to read something, just like put it into AI and it'll make a summary or something. Yeah. And I think I did talk about this before. And besides the fact that there are websites that do that already without, I don't know if they use AI, but like they do that already for you that are on the internet. Like if you don't read the thing, if you don't read the article, and even if you don't like open the article and you're just copy and pasting it and telling it to, hey, make me a summary, it could spit out something that has nothing to do with the article. And you wouldn't know because you didn't read the article.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why would you risk that? Especially if it's for an assignment, especially if it's for something like for a grade, and you're just spitting it in, like you're just putting it in and it spits something back out. And you're just like, well, my job's done. Like I didn't have to do anything. And it's like, you don't even know if that's accurate.
Yeah. And I think like cookies on websites as well.
I've started rejecting all of them
always
all
reject
the time.
Them, yeah.
I used to just be like, only essential, or even if, or I was just like, I'm just in a rush, like I would just press accept. But now I'm like, no, I'm going through.
Yeah.
Like after this, I'm like, no, I'm going through and I'm rejecting them because it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It really doesn't do anything except if you accept them. I think they
some
have
of them,
access to things.
some of them it doesn't let you reject
True.
it. You have to, which
True.
is a concern in and of itself. But yeah, I used to just be lazy and just press accept. But a while ago, my sister told me always reject them. Don't accept them. They steal your data. And now, especially with all the research that we've done for this, yeah, I reject them every time. So there have also been other discussions about AI and the future of AI, and just asking, does it have to be bad? And it's kind of important to look at the future of AI and how we can move forward with it, perhaps in a way that doesn't have to be bad. So what are some of the ways we've encountered it that in society, and how it's been used, and how do we think it could be rewired to be more inclusive and less harmful?
Well, I was just reading that article that we have to read for class tomorrow on AI, and how it was talking about how, like, I think it was at the beginning, it was like we can, and kind of how AI was like sort of started to be a tool of accessibility and like helping people. And I do think that to an extent, like technology in general, like it does have some positive side effects and stuff, and like it can be used for good. But I think, and as the article kind of talked about, like it's just how there's such a monopoly on tech companies right now, and how they're just all controlled by white men who are billionaires and who are just trying to make more money, and how it doesn't have to be that way. Like it could be that we use AI, like we said about like algorithmic bias and stuff, how we move away from that and we start using it to help include people, and to help make it more inclusive for people, and use it to reach people in marginalized communities instead of barring them from entering, basically, and saying this is only for the dominant group, because as if we need more help, as if we need more privilege. I think it does have, like, a lot of things in society right now, like there is a lot of possibility for good. I think it's just there's a lot of people controlling it at the top who don't want it to be used that way. And it really sucks.
And I really think that, just like with every institution and system in society, needs to be sort of deconstructed and reconstructed. Everything needs reforming. There's so much that we have to unlearn,
so much work.
And I think, as long as people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg are in charge of these tech companies, we're not going to get anywhere.
And I think too, a lot of times it's that people don't want to do the work, and I understand that from a certain extent. Like, it is hard, and sometimes it's a little depressing, like it's hard to see all the issues in society and like trying to fix them and not feeling like you're doing enough. But I think that's just kind of a tactic almost of like, well, you're not doing anything, like it's not working, you can't see it working, so it's not working. And it's like, even if everybody just did a little bit, like it would help a lot. And if you just and I guess also, like, sometimes it is a little bit of an access thing. Like, I feel like a lot of the articles we read about this are behind paywalls because we have access to them through university. And if we made those, like, how would we make those more accessible and more, like, readable, if you will? Because that's something, too, that I find sometimes. Like, we'll read articles and stuff for school, and I'm just like, oh, I can't understand this. Like, it's so word heavy, and it's so dense. And then I'm just like, if I can barely get through this, like, how would somebody who had no knowledge of this be able to understand what's going on? And I'm sure there's articles out there that, like, explain it in an easy way. But it's just that people don't know where to find them. And that's not their fault necessarily, but it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. Because it's not just that people are, quote unquote, uneducated, but it's that they just don't have that same access. Like, there's a deeper problem. There's a root to the problem. And it's not just like, oh, people just don't want to learn. And I mean, there are people like that, but I think it's also that they just don't know where to look, and they just don't know where to get access. And that's something that can be solved.
But I also think just changing the way I guess education systems are as well, and like decolonizing the classroom and having more, as we see, like most of my classes are like this because I'm in sort of the social studies and humanities. So we do have a lot of discussions and like meaningful conversations, and we can learn a lot from each other. But just like having more time in class where we can do that, where we can connect with each other, where we can discuss articles that we've read and
kind of like a seminar style.
And like learn from each other and have like in some of my classes we've had people who have done like note taking from the articles, and we've like ended the class with like a takeaway of the important points from the articles that we've read. And I think just having more sort of community like that within our classes, rather than just having, it's kind of a, you know, like the way, even just the way some of the physical spaces are set up, where it's just like you sit in rows, the professor stands at the front,
you're all facing one way,
speaks at you. I think just having more of a
like a round table.
And I think that is what, and it's, you know, it's not as easy in every field of study, obviously, but you couldn't have like
a big round table of like 80 students.
And in, you know, and some fields of study are more sort of like facts based and less discussion based, but even just having time in those less discussion heavy fields of study as well to just learn from each other. And it's less, you know, because I have found in some classes, this was more in first year than it is now, it was much more individual based. And as I've got sort of deeper into the feminist and gender studies department and the sociology department, there is a lot more community based work, and that doesn't mean it has to be everything is a group project, but just being able to learn from each other so that we don't have to like panic about the articles that we're reading and be like, oh, I have to put this into ChatGPT in order to understand it. Just giving,
get it done.
Just giving students time to reflect and learn from each other is, I think, is one way to like move on from having to rely on like ChatGPT summaries.
I have a couple thoughts. So first, I can't remember what exactly you said, but it made me think of how like a lot of like the STEM science subjects have like labs and stuff, and that's not necessarily like a discussion roundtable kind of thing, but it does make me think. I mean, I'm not in science. I've never taken like a science lab class. I don't really know. But it's like you're kind of at a station or something with a smaller group of people, or like you're one-on-one. And then you're kind of like going back and forth with that. And that's not necessarily like discussion, if you will, but that's a little bit less than like you're sitting in a room with 100 students and you're all just there individually. And I do think also that makes me think of how individualistic society has become. And I do think it needs to become more community based, and I know there are different facets of society and different groups that are community based, but I think especially like settler society is very like, you are an individual, you're not part of a group, you have to do everything on your own. Like you can't ask for help.
I agree, and I really think that is what we need to be focusing on. And I think the sort of like individualistic centered society is part of the problem on why perhaps a lot more people are relying on AI technologies.
It makes me think of how, this is a little off topic, but how like time is structured. Because what you were saying of like, we need more time for things. And I think that's a thing too that some profs understand, but others don't. And also just in general, because I think what I've kind of seen from people is like that we just don't have enough time. There's just not enough time in the day to do everything. And while I agree with that, and I'm glad that I do have some profs that are like, I have like some profs that are like very strict, very much like you have to hand this in at this point, this time, every time. Whereas others are like, if you get it to me a couple of days late, like you're fine. Like I'm not going to do anything, which I love. And I love that I have that balance, because if I didn't, I don't know what I would do. But I do think there needs to be a bit like of a reconstruction of how we manage time. And how, and this goes against the whole education system, which also goes back to your point of restructuring it. But of how, like, when I think of like people, I've seen people on TikTok who are like in corporate and they're like, my day starts and ends like 8 to 5. Once that time hits, I'm done. I'm out of the office. Don't contact me. And a lot of people are like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, what do you mean you're not reachable after 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
And it's like, because I have a life.
Yeah,
because my life is
exactly.
not, and that's a capitalist thing. Like, your life is your work, and that's it. And a lot of people are pushing back against this, and it's like, no, I'm entitled to, which is also a word of like, oh, you're not entitled, but whatever. Of like, you're entitled to your time, to like your rest, if you will. And how also, and I think this is an Audre Lorde quote that I'll paraphrase or something, but how like self-care and rest is an act of resilience. And like, when you take that time, you're fighting against the systems that are telling you that you are just a cog in the machine, and you're not allowed to do anything that doesn't directly benefit capitalism. And it's like, no. Like, I want to be able to spend time with myself, to take time for myself, and to also like spend time in a community that isn't work. So yeah, that was kind of off topic, but I think that kind of has to do with like just making time for things, because a lot of times in like education there is no time. You go to school, you go home, you have homework, and then you have to go to sleep.
Exactly.
And it's like, as someone who is neurodivergent, and like, I need that time to recharge, I need that time to not focus on school. And if I don't have that, then it just messes me up. And then I do worse. And then it's just like, why aren't we prioritizing that? And why can't you have both? Like,
exactly. And I heard somewhere, I can't remember where I heard it, so I can't be like held to it.
No, I know.
But I heard that like the circadian rhythm, like that 9 to 5 sort of like system that
24-hour
we all live by is like based on the male body,
whereas women have like the 28 days thing that revolves around your menstrual cycle. Like the sort of like assigned male at birth body. And I think that's another sort of issue as well regarding like women's work, and you know how, and it shows how the system is designed for cis men, for and by men.
And like, and then I think maybe people are using AI to do things more quickly, you know, like, I'll use AI is good because it helps us get things done at work more quickly. And whilst surface level, maybe that's good, but if you look deeper, I think instead of just using this AI technology to help with that, think deeper and think, wait, hang on, maybe we need to reconstruct how our work days and our work weeks are constructed, you know, instead of just having 2 days off at the end of the week.
No, because I've seen a lot of people who are like, they live in, I don't know where it is, but I think there's some countries that have like 4-day weeks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, would I ever love that? And like, also just to pull in like a personal anecdote, that was what my mom did. She worked, I think it's technically part-time, but she always took, especially when we were growing up, she took Mondays off. And so she'd have the weekend with us basically, and then she'd have Monday to like clean the house and to recharge and to get reset for the week. And she was like, I couldn't have done it without that. And that's obviously a privilege that she was afforded, that a lot of people don't have. But I think it's like, that's just something like, why would that be seen as like quote unquote like weak or something, or that's just you needing extra time? And it's like, it's kind of physically impossible to get everything done that we're supposed to get done in the amount of time that we have. So yeah, I think it's a whole big issue. And I think also the thing with AI is it's just solving a surface level problem.
Exactly.
And then there's going to be another, like, I'm sure there's going to be another problem eventually down the road where AI is going to be causing a problem. And you're like, okay, let's develop another algorithm to combat that. And you're just going to keep piling on solutions until you can't do that anymore. And you've just stopped looking at the bottom of like, what is the root of this problem and how can we go from bottom up? So. And
I keep seeing people like post things like, oh, how did I function before ChatGPT? Like, what did I do before? And I'm just like,
what everyone else did.
I don't
like,
I don't understand that.
And I do think obviously society has shifted and changed over the years, and it's not like, oh, we're living in the exact same society that we were 20 years ago, but it's like, I don't know, I just don't think that those kind of solutions are actually advancing us and that we're actually going anywhere with it, especially when they're not being used in the way that they could be, that could actually benefit everybody and that could be used to create change.
And because I think in many ways there are, you know, many ways that technology has significantly helped us. You know, we wouldn't be able to be doing this now. So, you know, we're not like bashing technology altogether. It's just specifically generative AI and the things that we've observed and how it's getting to a point now where people's lives, people's jobs are at risk.
Yeah, and I think also just like the way that we create, like even the stuff that creates our technology, like where is that coming from? Is it ethical? Is it like, I don't know, like is it sustainable? And that would take a lot of people don't love that because it would take a lot of work to fix. But it's like, is it not worth it? Like, is it not worth it in the long run if everything else is going to take, if it's going to take like 100 years anyway or whatever, like why not start now? And actually start implementing change rather than just being like, oh, the next generation will fix that.
Yeah.
Well, then the next generation will say, oh, but the next generation will fix that. Like, I feel like that's just something that people say a lot of the time is like, oh, yeah, this next generation is going to save us or whatever. And it's like, well, one, not if you put that pressure on them without any help, because that's just crazy. But also just like, why can't you start?
Yeah.
Like, why can't you start with doing that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think
it's just putting blame on other people.
I think people are scared because they don't want to sort of change what they're used to.
Yeah, that's true.
But then that's why we need...
They don't want to acknowledge the privilege that they have.
Yeah, but that's why we need more awareness and more, hopefully with this podcast, we're, even if it only reaches a small number of people.
Yeah.
If we've only educated one person, then... that in itself is great, you know.
And also, like, I feel educated. Like, I feel like I've learned so much from this that I didn't know.
Yeah, me too. The podcast from the Canadian Women's Foundation, All Right, Now What? Episode AI and Gender Equality, looks at some ideas and changes that need to be made. They had several speakers on a panel who each talk about better ways that AI can move forwards. Hazel T. Biana, DLSU College of Liberal Arts, said that these systems need to be built within a feminist framework. Paula Ricourt, Harvard University, said that we need to be supporting multidisciplinary teams that address community needs and local problems, and that it's important for women to be leaders within these teams. And if done correctly, AI could be used to detect gender bias and class bias rather than reinforce it. Paulette Senior, former CEO of the Canadian Women's Foundation, said that AI could be used to find and address the issues in research, for example, finding the barriers as well as intersections across identities, and design them in a way that helps rather than discriminates. And Benjamin Prudhomme, MILA, Quebec Artificial Intelligence Institute, said that inclusion must be an active part of the conversation and cannot be sidelined. Women need to be at the centre of projects, and AI could be designed to detect misogyny in texts, as well as signs of human trafficking and modern slavery. But if AI continues to be controlled by only a small, unrepresentative group, it will continue to reinforce, promote, and perpetuate systems, biases, and cause harm. So, how can we make AI in a way that is bias-free? And I think one way is, even something that we should just be doing anyway, is to test our own biases and test our unconscious biases. So, for example, one test I heard somewhere, and I can't remember where I heard it. I might have heard it somewhere and then, I don't know, changed it, made it up. I don't know. But I heard it somewhere. I heard someone talking about it. It might have been on TikTok. But it was just to imagine you're sitting on a bench in a park or somewhere in public, and you see like different people passing by you. A few people pass by, a family passes by, a couple holding hands pass by, a few more people, a nurse who has just come off shift passes by, another couple, another family, a construction worker walks by you. And now think back. How many of the couples were queer or same-gender couples? How many of the people were people of colour? Did any of the families have queer parents? Were any of the families of colour? Did you imagine the nurse as a man or a woman? Did you imagine the construction worker as a man or a woman? And this is just a way of testing our unconscious biases and thinking, oh wait, all of the couples were straight couples. All of the people were white people. The families were all mother, father, kids. And And I think just looking at that sort of opens our eyes to how we do have unconscious biases.
Yeah.
And just to recognize that and think how, when creating these AI systems, that can be put into them unconsciously, but they're still there, you know.
It could even be like if you were asking ChatGPT something and you were like putting in something that had an unconscious bias, like if it was your own unconscious or conscious bias being put in to the system, well, then you're giving that kind of data to AI.
Yeah.
And so then it'll use it further. And if everyone's kind of doing that without realizing it, then that's just more unconscious bias that's being fed to AI, including the data that's already been given by the way it was made.
And I think it's important to say that whilst pretty much all of us do have unconscious biases, it's also, it's not all unconscious. Like some of it is very intentional.
Like you can't just pass everything off as like, oh, I didn't know. Oh, I didn't mean to.
Like a lot of, I mean, I don't know how much. Most of it is like intentional, like designed to harm people. And it's, you know, it's partly because of these systems that are ingrained in society. Why we have unconscious biases, because we've been taught these things. But even just other ways to look at it as well. I heard somewhere a while ago, if you go to like Google Images and type in schoolboy, it comes up with like, you know, a picture of just a boy at school, maybe in school uniform, as you would expect. But if you type in schoolgirl, it comes up with these like highly sexualized images. Yeah, I don't know if it still does because this was a while ago. But yeah, the difference in the images that show up when typing in schoolboy and schoolgirl are, it's like, it's not surprising, but it's like, wow, this is really...
That makes me think too of like, if you were to say schoolboy, like a lot of people would just be like, oh, like a little kid. Like, oh, a little kid is what they're picturing. But if you say schoolgirl, that could range from a little kid to a fully grown adult. And I think that's also the issue of like infantilizing women and stuff, which is another big problem. But yeah, like I feel like these are some things that I've just like, I've thought about, but not really. And I think a lot of people maybe have thought about them, but not intentionally. But yeah, and I think it's important for people to recognize and acknowledge that like having unconscious bias doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. It's just a byproduct of the society that we've grown up in, that it has taught us. But that doesn't mean that you should just be like, oh, well, I didn't mean to, so it's not my fault. And like I didn't do anything and like I can't do anything to fix it. And it's like, well, once you recognize that you have those unconscious biases, even if it takes your entire life to unlearn them, that's still better than just being like, well, I didn't mean to do it, so it's not my fault, and I'm not going to do anything about it, because like, that's not the point.
Once you're made aware that like these beliefs that you hold are harmful, can like discriminate against people, and you still don't do anything, then it becomes like willful ignorance. That's kind of what I was trying to say, of like, if you recognize it and then you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had that, let me work to fix it, great, you're on the right track. If you mess up every once in a while, that's fine, everyone does. But if you see that and you're like, oh, I see that I have that unconscious bias, but I'm too old, or I don't have the time, and I just don't want to learn, and I just don't want to learn how to fix and to figure out better ways of living, I guess, then that's on you. Then that kind of becomes a little bit of like, then it's your fault. Of like, then that's a personal choice that you've decided to not acknowledge your privilege and acknowledge your position in society. And that's unfortunate. And just thinking, I just remembered another way I've seen, like, I guess the discrepancies and the discrimination that's shown up in algorithms is like the schoolgirl and the schoolboy that I mentioned. Another thing that I've seen happening is, again, in Google Images, is the difference in what shows up when you type in professional hairstyles versus unprofessional hairstyles. And professional hairstyles, that comes up with like, you know, like a white person, you know, with like air quotes, like neat hair, you know. But when you type in unprofessional hairstyles, a lot of what shows up is like black hairstyles. And it's like, that's, you know, it's eye-opening to how this is ingrained into digital systems, and then AI is learning from that, you know. So when everyone says like, oh, I'm going to ask, if like two people can't agree on something and someone says, oh, I'll just ask ChatGPT, that'll
So
give
like
us
flipping
like
a coin, I don't know.
that'll give us like a clean slate biased opinion. Like no it won't,
Like
you know?
like it's not unbiased.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the thing that some people like to think about is like, oh, AI is just neutral.
Yeah.
Like AI is just a bunch of data that has no opinion either way. Because I think too, when you ask it sometimes, it'll be like, oh, I don't know. Like when you ask it to be like, pick this person over this person, like I can't say. Like I'm unbiased, I'm neutral. And it's like, no, like it's not necessarily. Because I can't think of any specific examples, but I'm sure there's been instances where people have asked it something of like, oh, do you think this over this? And the AI will respond and be like, well, I can't really say, but I'll pick this person or something. Like those kind of things where it's trying to not make it seem biased, but it is inherently, as we've discussed, it is inherently biased. Like it's, if you think that AI is not biased towards a certain group, that's not true.
I think one example I can think of is, I haven't typed it in myself because I try to avoid ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've seen other people posting about it and talking about it. Is when they ask ChatGPT about Ukraine, it's all like, it's positive. It's like, yeah, let's, we should support Ukraine. But when you ask it about Palestine, it's like, oh, I can't answer this question.
And it's like, double standard much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all, and I think it's also all political.
Yeah.
And I think, and again, I love going on my little tangents. To go on a little tangent about this, I saw this the other day, and of course it was Hosier talking about it. And he was talking about how he was basically kind of like everything in life, because he was talking about music and stuff as a musician and stuff. And he was like, art and everything in life is inherently political. But it's more about, like, you can, like, that's a fact. You can't ignore the fact that everything in life is political, because that's the society and system that we've set up.
The personal is political.
Yeah, like the person, yeah, exactly. The personal is political. But then he was like, you don't have to go out every single day and continuously acknowledge of like, oh, this choice I made, like kind of overthinking every single choice you make of like, this is all political. Like, that's not what he was saying. And that's not the point of life, to like look at everything and scrutinize every single decision you make as how it's affecting another person, but that to realize that like you have to do that every, like, to a certain extent. Like he wasn't like, okay, every time you go outside your door you have to think about the actions that happen over the course of the day and how they affect different people, because that's exhausting. Like physically you can't do that.
Yeah.
But basically he was just like, yeah, you don't have to think about everything as political all the time, because that's too much, but you have to acknowledge that is the reality. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to pretend that that's not the world we live in, because it is. Even if you don't acknowledge it every day, that's still a fact of life.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I think, like, whilst we've discussed just now, like, is there a middle ground? I think there could be, potentially, if the system is deconstructed.
Yeah.
Like, can it, if we ask, like, can AI truly be helpful? Can it truly be unbiased? The only way it can be is if, like, genuine change, like decolonization, deconstructing these oppressive systems that are embedded into every institution. Yeah,
like making it actually inclusive and intersectional. And honestly more feminist, like feminist based. Yeah. Like what you said, that person who's, I can't remember, said like the feminist framework.
In the other podcast, they mentioned that it has to be done within a feminist framework. Yeah. There needs to be people of all identities, people of all genders, sexualities, race, ethnicity,
class.
Yeah, class, like disability, everybody, because everybody exists in society, whether they're whether dominant society tries to erase them or not, they still exist. They can't stop us from existing.
Very big thing right now.
But I mean, like, as like a woman, as a neurodivergent person, as a queer person, they try to stop you from existing, but like, they're not going to stop that.
You can't just be like, oh, you don't exist. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm invisible now. I guess I'm just not here. Like, exactly. That's not how that works. So, as much as they would wish. But
and like, so everybody should be represented in these systems.
Yeah. And I think, too, just as a little last point, like, I don't think I would be as opposed to using AI and that kind of technology if it had that kind of framework. Because this isn't me being like, no matter what happens, I will never use AI. But as of right now, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel not necessarily safe, but I just don't feel like it does me any good. And it's not beneficial for me as a person. And I understand that for some people, like, it benefits them. And I'm like, okay, but have you thought about why it benefits you and why you use it instead of just being like, oh, it's the easy way out? Because I'm like, I don't use it not because I don't think it is an easy way out, but because I just don't feel ethically, morally comfortable with using it, knowing what I know,
exactly,
both now and before, of like the impacts that it has on people, on the environment, on like just everything. And I'm just like, personally for me, I'm like, I can't justify using it in any situation.
So that's why I think like we really should try to move away from ChatGPT and AI generated images. As we've seen, there's so many AI, like as I mentioned before, Donald Trump has used it. He used it to make that weird video about Gaza, which was really disturbing.
I don't know if I saw that one. I was thinking of I think it was like the Time magazine poster thing of him being like a king. There was that one.
And he made one of Taylor Swift as well. Like saying
I think
that
she
was going to vote for him.
I think I remember that. Yeah, that was a thing.
But I think, you know, like maybe in order for it to be fully used for good, to be fully unbiased and indiscriminatory, like I said, it needs to be reconstructed. But then in the society that we live in, can it ever like truly be used for good? I think that's
a big question.
Like a big question to like think about with as we end this discussion.
I don't think I have an answer for that. I don't know if anybody does, but
it's quite a philosophical question.
Yeah. We wanted to end this episode by giving special thanks to everyone who helped us on this project. So that includes CHMA, where we recorded our podcast, the RP Bell librarians who helped us with our research, the Mount Allison Feminist and Gender Studies Department, the NB Coalition for Pay Equity, Future NB, our gender and work classmates and professor, Dr. Rochelle Pascoe-Delorier, and to Nadia, a fellow student who designed our wonderful logo.
Thank you for listening. This has been AI Algorithmic Inequity with your hosts Ellen
and Claire.